Okay.
Live every day as if it were the last, because before you know it, time goes past and life's just not that long. Tell all you love that you love them so, because even if you do, they might not know, and one day we'll all be gone. Taste the wind, don't let it blow on by. Sing songs of love, let the music get you high. And when it's said and done, you'll know the sun will shine on. Learn all you can from the folks you meet, though they might be strange and sleep on the street, but in some ways we all are wise. Give all your thoughts.
I'm reading to you testimonies from veterans telling the bloody truth about war from this book, Hell, Healing, and Resistance, by the veteran Daniel Halleck. Vietnam veteran Fred Lewis, a member of Veterans for Peace, says, I was less than a month in country, very green. We were on patrol in a free fire zone, and as we walked along a ridge, we spotted a few people in black pajamas and coolie hats walking on a trail in the valley below us. The whole company, over 100 men, lined up and started shooting. My weapon was an M79 grenade launcher, so they were well beyond my range. I stood and watched, stunned, bewildered, afraid, fascinated by this somewhat bizarre shooting gallery. A buddy offered to let me shoot his rifle. I said, no, that's okay. A small patrol went down and found a young boy with a belly wound. They left him. Our captain called in 3 Viet Cong kills to headquarters, a bitter taste of my year to come. And later on, I watched my squad leader check the papers of a wrinkled Vietnamese man walking with his granddaughter. His head was bowed in fear, eyes darting. My sergeant handed the papers back and said, go. We watched him walk away in relief and apprehension. And then my squad leader raised his rifle and shot the man in the head. The man's head exploded like a watermelon hit with a sledgehammer. Small chunks of brain, white with flecks of blood, landed on the toe of my boot. I remember gently brushing away those pieces with the back of my fingers. That's all I remember. I shut down some more. Must survive. I've taken over 28 years to cry for the old man, for his granddaughter, for my sergeant, for me. I did nothing. And that's what you did. Nothing. Standard operating procedure. You depended on your comrades for your very life. They carried loaded weapons, much anger. Little massacres happened hundreds of times a day in Vietnam. You must remember that it does not take monsters to commit monstrous acts. My squad leader returned home a decorated hero, a Bronze Star, a Purple Heart on his chest. You may know him. He may deliver your mail or wait on you in the hardware store or teach your children. Or he may be stalking the jungles of Hawaii or some other forest with other men, unable to return home or he may be one of the 100,000 suicides since the end of the Vietnam War. I must apologize. I gave you wrong facts. I don't remember if my sergeant used a rifle or a pistol. I don't know if the old man and the young girl were related. I brushed someone's brains off my boot, although I don't know if it was that day. But what I have said is absolutely true. And those of you who are in high school or about to go to high school know that what is in your history text is baloney. History books are written so that they don't cause any trouble anywhere. They contain just generalizations and facts, but nothing of what's in the stomach. You know, the thing that made me cry the most in veteran Tim O'Brien's book was when he said, "I survived, but it's not a happy ending. I was a coward. I went to the war." Vietnam veteran Bruce Cole, a Marine Company commander in Vietnam, says, one of his hands had just fallen right off, burned off, talking about a fellow soldier. And now his charred wrist bone was sticking out from under the poncho we'd wrapped him in to drag him here. We had to use a second poncho to cover where the first one had melted. He was burned so hot. Private First Class Wall died today, burned to death in the service of his country. A blonde, fair-haired kid whom everyone loved, didn't even shave yet. The other men would tease him, "Hey, Wall, let me borrow your razor, ha ha ha." Now, sitting here, everything is very still. Sunset, orange sky, red clouds moving slowly. Water buffalo knee-deep in the pink-orange water, grazing on tender green marsh grass along the shore. Fishermen's sampans anchored out in the lagoon. Fish cooking, smoke rising, no wind. Everything calm, so serene. How do they go on living day to day like this with the war going on all around? Now I can hear birds singing all around, dark green mountain forest reflected in the mirror lagoon. Private First Class Wall's cooked body is cooling off. The sick, sweet smell is going away. And now it's too late to fly his body out. His charred, contorted body is lying here next to me. He's a routine medevac. That means we don't send the dead out before the wounded. The wounded have higher priority. It makes grim sense in this insanity. Too many wounded today. His body stays with me tonight, burned black, cooked meat. And now the fishermen's fires seem brighter, the sun is gone, the birds have stopped singing. Darkness comes, swoosh, crack, incoming, fuck, rockets from uphill, blinding flashes, shrapnel cracking, men screaming, "Doc, Doc, where the fuck is Doc?" Doc's hit. The first rocket hit his position. Crack, crack. Now I hear mortar tubes thumping out there. Rockets and mortars can't do a fucking thing but lie here, face down, caught in the open. Hear shrapnel cracking into trees. Smell the broken trees. Each explosion comes closer. Fuck. They're walking the mortars across our position, each one closer, each one louder. The ground jumps higher. Dirt and rocks fall on my head. Hot shrapnel. No helmet. Shit. The next one's coming up my ass. Jesus Christ, I'll kill those fuckers. Just let the next round pass me. Come on, come on, come on. Crack. They miss me. I breathe the delicious smoke and dust. I'm lying with the top of my head in private first-class Wall's armpit. The meat is falling off his bones. It's stuck in my hair. I wonder if his body took any shrapnel from me. I don't want to know. I cover him up. A man is crying for his mother. Gurgled coughing, muffled sobbing in the quiet of the night. Too quiet. Assault coming soon. I can feel it. I know it. Too quiet. Got to get our shit together. Perimeter defense. Redistribute ammunition. I will never again remember the cooked flesh stuck in my hair. I never want to. I never will. I remember now, 26 years later, that I shaved my head. Vietnam Veterans of America founder Bobby Mueller says, I went into the student union building and there was a Marine officer. He looked very sharp. He had his dress blues on. He had the old crimson stripe down the side of his trousers. I said, that looks good. I'm going to be a Marine. And right there in that sentence is really the tragedy of my life, as I view it. The tragedy of my life was not being shot in Vietnam. The tragedy in my life is one that has been shared by all too many Americans and is still being shared today. For me, knowledge of the fact that my government had seen fit to involve us militarily in Vietnam was sufficient for me. I never asked the reason why. I just took it on blind faith that my government knew a hell of a lot more than I ever could, and that they must be right. My opinion has changed since then. Ron Kovic, perhaps the most famous Vietnam veteran, remembers the day he was paralyzed in a firefight in Vietnam and was carried away from the battle amidst screaming human wreckage. Oh God, get me out of here. Please help. Oh Jesus. Like little children now, not like Marines, not like the posters, not like that day in high school. This is for real. Oh, I don't want to die, screams a young boy cupping his intestines with his hands. Oh, please. Oh, no. Oh, God. Oh, help. Mother. He screams again. A large billboard with a picture of a U.S. Marine in full uniform, standing ramrod straight and at attention, with a firmly grasped sword lightly touching the brim of his gold-braided hat. A caption reads simply, "The change is forever." Vietnam veteran Gerald McCarthy says, "Going to boot camp will change you forever. I wouldn't let my son go to boot camp. Forget going to war. I wouldn't even let him go to boot camp. I wouldn't go back to boot camp for all the money you could give me. And it's not because I'm afraid of dying in boot camp, but because I think it can change you psychologically forever. Why would you want to lose your youth? There are so many ways to spend it. Retired Navy Admiral Eugene Carroll says, "First, I disabuse him of the notion that the military makes anything better." When he was asked what he would say to an idealistic young person contemplating a career in the military to make the world a better place. "The military exists to kill and destroy," says retired Navy Rear Admiral Eugene Carroll. Now, you can rationalize it, and you can justify it on the grounds that, well, there's a great evil out there that we must redress, but that involves killing and destroying. And everybody is the loser. Humanity is the loser. So I would certainly disabuse him of any idea that we're going to be a force for uplifting people and the quality of life in this world. I would tell him to get busy learning about energy, to become a leader in developing new alternative energy sources that don't pollute the earth, to be a leader in agriculture and help nations that are starving to grow food that will improve their lot. There are all sorts of practical and very needful ways to help improve life. And the military is not one of them. He says, JROTC, Junior ROTC, is an abomination. Imagine if preachers and priests and imams and rabbis would tell their congregation that every worship day. Junior ROTC is absolutely immoral. The whole idea of trying to teach a child that wearing a uniform and shooting a gun is patriotic, that this makes you a patriot, to kill somebody, is obscene. The mother of a U.S. soldier in the Gulf War said about her soldier son, he's having a real struggle with what he is seeing there. He was just sobbing, beyond sobbing. Young kid from Iraq, they had killed him. My son said he looked just like my brother Brad when he was younger. And there he lay, dead, with his eyes staring up at us. It makes me sick. How will he handle this when he gets home, says his mother. I love Mike. I dread it every time I hear a car. Will this be the army coming to tell me he's dead? A part of me would die if he gets killed. Manuel Carvalho, a Vietnam veteran, says, what 18-year-old knows what democracy is, or what picking up a gun and shooting someone is like? They don't tell you that side. They tell you that they're looking for a few good men, that you're going to get a nice uniform, that you look pretty for the girls, but they do not tell you the reality. And the reality comes in many ways. I enlisted in a time when there was no war in 1963. I thought it was a good time. I'd get it done, get it over with, put it in the past. And then I found myself in boot camp, and then in Okinawa. And suddenly I'm on the shores of Vietnam right after this Gulf of Tonkin business. I wound up in a firefight in 1965 and got my legs smashed up by some rounds and lay in a hospital back in Queens, New York, reading about the war I just left. And I couldn't believe it. The stories, the misinformation. Only then did I start to believe that I was being conned. I was conned to get out of the military with a disability, but they weren't about to give it to me. I stayed. I got shot up. I got Purple Hearts, Bronze Stars, got paraded by Mayor John Lindsay in New York City, and hey. I had a run-in with one of my neighbors after getting out of the military. Met this commander who was a recruiter, a naval commander, right in Brooklyn, and he asked me, well, how was your time? I said, pretty tough. But I hear you're a recruiter. And you know what? We're on opposite sides. What? We're on opposite sides. I'll do anything. I can to stop anybody from signing their life away. Because that's exactly what it was, signing your life away. But you don't realize it. You're 18, you've got the world by the tail, and you have no worries. I think we need to educate people. Go into the schools, go into the college, be almost forceful. Tell them we shouldn't allow anyone to come in here and try to convince us to kill someone. If we educate the people, there won't be anyone to fight the wars, and they'll have to do it themselves. And they're not going to do it themselves because they'll get killed. Jay Wink, a World War II veteran, member of Veterans for Peace, says, my recruiters were in the newspapers, in the magazines, in the films, on the radio, billboards, everywhere. Growing up in that milieu, I was, like all my friends, all of them, dying to get into it. Couldn't wait until I was old enough to get into it. I started to change my mind as I got closer to the sound of the guns. But nevertheless, I was there. I went. I was very scared. I was very shy. I was very naive. I was very insecure. And that's a hell of a place to be carrying a rifle. I carried that rifle in World War II in Germany and chased the Germans from one end of Czechoslovakia to the other. And when I went into the army, I was not quite 18. And when I went to war, I went to defend democracy. What I knew of democracy was, oh, beautiful for amber waves of grain. I knew the Boy Scout motto, and that was about it. I knew what some of the symbols of a purported democracy were, but I did not know what democracy is. And before I went into the Army in 1941, Pearl Harbor was attacked. Every billboard along the roads, every publication like Life magazine was loaded, absolutely loaded with propaganda. All you have to do is dig up any publication from those times, those years, and you'll see what I mean. There were pictures of dead Americans lying on beaches in the South Pacific. There were signs that had been put up on the beach next to those bodies. The sign said, "Kill the bastards," referring to the Japanese, of course, or whoever it was. Sure, we can understand the anger and the heartbreak that people feel when their friends have been killed. But we also have to understand the profound and crazily insidious propaganda affected by that kind of thing when day after day, day after day, year after year, kill the bastards. Immediately when hostilities break out, we are the good guys, whatever country it is, and they're the bad guys, and they deserve to die. We learned this. When I say we, I'm talking about all of us, because we cannot separate ourselves from anyone else in the world. On his last day in office, Eisenhower said, "Beware of the military-industrial complex." My point is that people on the top of the chain of command lie. They lie for whatever reasons, and that's the irony. And the poor snooks of us who are on the line deal with heroism in one degree or another, depending on what's happening. But those people at the top lie. And they lie shamelessly, endlessly. And I don't care what president you want to name, they lie. The generals and admirals in their wardrooms, they lie. They lie, they lie, they lie. And it's very hard for me to make a distinction between this country where I was born and raised and the leaders of this country. It's a difficult distinction to make. I'd rather see people burn the flag than to follow the flag blindly into some ill-advised and corrupt process of which we've had plenty of examples. We usually don't know that we're being propagandized when we are. I hope that whoever has to face the choice of going into the military in order to get an education realizes that they may get an education different from what they're looking for. And certainly education from without is crucial. Reading, talking, taking in everything you can. But that's only one piece of it. The rest of it, I think the most important part of it is internal. How do you know when you're being conned? When somebody is offering you something that looks very nice at a very low price. What I like to do is go back inside myself and be in touch with that part of me that wants something for nothing. That's one way of knowing that you're being conned. A World War II veteran, Pete Murphy, says, "I joined the Marine Corps when I was 20 years old, had a wife and 2 children. I went to Paris Island, and they lied to me all the way. I hated everybody. And then one day, I killed a soldier. He was Japanese. His wallet came out of his jacket. I opened it up. I looked at it, and there was a picture of him, his wife, his 3 children. And I said, what the hell am I doing here? Here's a guy that's never done a thing to me. And yet I had to kill him because his boss said, go to war, and my boss said, go to war. And they lie, and they lie, and they are still lying to us. And they're ruining this country. Your son goes, and do you think they care if he comes back? No, they don't. I've seen it with my own eyes. Vietnam veteran Jim Murphy says, it's hard for me to describe the conditioning process I went through at the time. It was almost like we were raised to fight that war. I mean, it's strange. I know it sounds strange, put in that context, but I think my generation was simply raised to fight the Vietnam War. We started off life in kindergarten pledging allegiance to the flag. And then we joined the Cub Scouts, where they gave us a little uniform and taught us nifty little salutes. And then we went to the Boy Scouts, and then high school football, where everything was team-oriented, and you had to obey the coach. And then we got drafted. And by that time, we'd already had lots of the conditioning necessary not to question. And when I got my draft notice, I enlisted. I was afraid that if I was drafted, I would automatically be sent to Vietnam for 2 years. So I did the smart thing. I enlisted for 4 years. And they sent me to Vietnam. But I was ready. We all just jumped right into the boat. It was like something that we had been taught. It was our duty, our obligation. We just accepted it. We didn't know that Ho Chi Minh, the leader of North Vietnam, returned downed Air Force flyers during the Second World War, and that the French had supported the Japanese in order to maintain their economic stronghold in Vietnam. We didn't know that Ho Chi Minh was an ally in the past, because that was never in any of our books. We never knew that the Vietnamese just wanted to be left alone by European powers. It wasn't part of the history we were taught. What we were taught was that the communists, this little room filled with communists, was going to take over Southeast Asia, and the domino theory and all that, which gets back to those textbooks again. I strongly recommend that you question the textbooks. Carol Picou, a woman soldier during the Gulf War, now suffers from what is probably the combined effects of toxic medications and radiation from depleted uranium, which the United States used in that war. She says, risks about which we were never warned and which the Pentagon still tries to hide. She doubts that the Pentagon will ever be brought to task for its systemic deception, but she wishes she could be allowed to place her own advertisement alongside the recruitment billboards. And she says, I would love to make a commercial now. When I joined the Army, it was be all you can be. So take us and show us in basic training, firing our weapons, climbing mountains, rappelling, doing all those wonderful things the Army teaches you to do, and then show us now with our crippled bones, our incontinence, in other words, not being able to hold your piss. Take all of us in our wheelchairs, missing our arms and legs, dying of cancer and brain tumors. Take our graves, put that in a commercial. Be all you can be. Now what can we be? Would they let that be aired? Of course not. And who would make my commercial? Nobody. And here is a boot camp chant from the U.S. Marine Corps. Rape the town, kill the people. That's the thing we love to do. Rape the town, kill the people. That's the only thing to do. Watch the kiddies scream and shout. Rape the town, kill the people. That's the thing we love to do. A boot camp chant in the U.S. Marine Corps. And do you wonder why I, who opposes all war, who damns all war, why I have paid not one single bloody penny of federal income tax for 42 years? Almost half of the federal income tax goes for U.S. wars, past wars, present wars, and possible future wars, the very hell that these veterans describe. Veteran Daniel Halleck, the author of this book, says, we're sitting in a training class in the dilapidated old gym. The ROTC headquarters is little more than a series of bunkers built onto the inside wall of a turn-of-the-century physical education hall. At the front of the room is Major C. I can't remember him without the old fear welling up inside of me. And every day I have to stand rigidly for inspection before him, unable to move a muscle, as his eyes absorb every detail of polish and uniform and bearing, every detail except the fact that it is a human being standing there before him. His support of the necessity for violence frightens me. Perhaps today like at no other time. Now he has digressed from the lecture and is telling foxhole stories from his tour in Vietnam. He is unbelievably laughing. He's telling how funny it is when two Marines are diving for the same hole under mortar fire and they cannot both fit. He's asked if he has ever killed anyone. He says, yeah, I had to kill some people. And then goes on with the story. I watched some of my classmates. Now they are laughing too. They're beginning to become comfortable with the class, with everything. They're being groomed, it is clear, from the looks and smiles and nods that they are progressing very well. I listen uncomfortably from the back of the room. Inside, part of me is screaming for humanity, for reality to break in. But another part of me wants to be accepted by them all, to be this definition of a man, to see it all as necessary and virtuous, so that my inner torment will end. A gunnery sergeant, whose face I only remember as fierce and angry, is screaming at me as our platoon stands at attention in the cold darkness of early morning. I've done something wrong again. He reaches out, grabs some stray whiskers I missed while shaving, and rips them out of my neck. We're jogging. The gunnery sergeant starts to chant to the rhythm of clomping boots and yells at us to join in. It's obscene. It's about our mothers, my mother, whom I love. We have to sing it. Next comes the familiar mantra, kill, left, right, kill, left, right, kill the motherfuckers, left, right. We hit the dunes by 6 a.m. There are huge machine guns in pits. We're ordered to jump in and begin firing at tires along a far bank in the distance. We're told, fill the bastards with lead. That's the enemy, boys. I see the tires catch on fire from the friction of so many bullets. I wonder and wonder some more. Some poor freshman in boot camp left his socks on his bed before inspection. They screamed at him for a long time. And now he is just a heap on the floor, sobbing, crying like a baby. He will have to go home to his mommy and daddy, we're told. They do a lot of screaming here. We're told it's to make a man out of us. After a while, you become numb. The yelling seems to come from far away. Your thoughts run around in circles. You don't listen because nothing is really being said. It is just loud noise. And maybe that's what they want. Become numb. Don't ask anything. Don't say anything. Just do it. And when the screaming begins, you cannot even move your eyes. You're like a zombie. I don't know what it is, but a voice within grows louder and louder. Get the hell out. This isn't you. It isn't you. I walk into the ROTC bunker and tell the officers I want out. And there's a stunned silence. Faces change in a heartbeat. I see something new in the eyes of the gunnies, majors, midshipmen that day, something beyond suspicion and misunderstanding. There's a dark condescension, cold isolation. A single sentence has cut me off forever. I'm no longer one of them. Talk about a street gang. Mechanically, I go through the motions of my discharge in the electric silence, hand in my uniforms, other military paraphernalia, avoiding eye contact. My mind still races with fear. I cannot yet believe it's all true, that I am really free. And with the final token handed in, the last stroke of the pen, I walk, I float out of the door. I'm giddy, wonderfully uncertain about the future. What the hell happens now? I don't know. I don't care. I stop in the late summer air outside. The world looks somehow different now. I take a breath. I step into it. While the military makes much of team cohesion and plays heavily on the human desire to belong, its ultimate purpose is the calculated killing of other human beings. Buried under the lofty goals of self-sacrifice, self-denial for the good of the whole, the noble end of training is nothing other than death. We make much of cults whose leaders deceive naive followers, lead them down paths of death and destruction. National ire is kindled at the very mention of Jonestown, Waco, Heaven's Gate. But what would we say if we were to learn of an organization that entices hundreds of thousands of teenagers into its ranks each year, offering money, an adventure, a new family, a new identity, and a promise for membership in, quote, one of the most elite organizations ever created, unquote. And what if we heard that this organization makes it illegal to leave? and imprisons or shoots members who try to leave. And what if we were told that the leaders of this organization systematically corrupt the morals of its new converts, teach them the dehumanization of whole nations and classes of people, take them to foreign countries, put weapons in their hands, force them to kill? And what if the new converts were forced to chant, to kill, to kill, to kill with no mercy? Blood, blood makes the grass grow. Ready to kill, ready to die, but never will. Blood makes the grass grow. Isn't that the kind of thing we put Charles Manson away for? And wouldn't such an organization be perceived as one of the biggest cults of all time? Welcome to the U.S. Marine Corps, Army, Navy, and Air Force. Paul Pappas, a World War II veteran in the U.S. Marines, says, "In spite of not wanting to get killed, I chose to serve in the most dangerous branch of the forces, the Marine Corps. Movies depicting the South Pacific had emphasized only the glory of fighting the wicked Japanese. And during boot camp, the base commander spoke to us, 'Everything in your training has a purpose.' How true his words were, I did not grasp until later. And not being an athletic person, I found the physical training strenuous. It was not easy to keep up. But what was most devastating was a psychological manipulation aimed at making me what I was not and did not want to be, a killer. I didn't realize this fully until right before the invasion of Okinawa. They did everything they could to make us hate. The caste system of rank was rigidly enforced. We were constantly kept on edge with spot inspections and forced marches in the middle of the night. Whatever could be done to aggravate and anger us. It got so bad that someone blew up the NCO's privy. The control over us was relentless. There was no room to breathe or relax. All we did was to react inwardly, not outwardly. Anger, frustration, hatred build up inside of me. Tenderness and compassion were destroyed. And we became beasts, killing machines. And there came a point where they had to draw the line because somebody was going to get killed, and it wasn't going to be the enemy. World War II veteran Leonard Dietz says, on August 10th, the day after the Nagasaki bombing, that was in 1945, I took my last daylight mission to Tokyo to strike the Tokyo arsenal. There were 3 waves of B-29s, 20 bombers each. I remember looking down, we were at 23,000 feet, and we could see nothing of the city of Tokyo because it was leveled. It was like a giant hand had come out of the sky and mashed everything to the ground. It looked like it was hit by an atomic bomb. Tokyo, Japan. The U.S. leveled it. The intensity of the air war in Japan was horrendous. The American public has not really ever been aware of the extent of the damage. It may have been reported in the press, but it didn't get much attention. More people were killed by fire bombs than were killed by the atomic bombs. Far more. I learned that war is not glorious, but it's about suffering and dying. It's a vile and evil business that blights everything it touches, robs people of their lives and futures, forces many good people to do bad things against their better natures. The whole thing was so bad, no matter how you look at it, that we can't ever let anything like this ever happen again. Vietnam veteran Don says, "How does one explain a helicopter assault flying straight into an enemy position at 100 miles an hour, 10 feet off the ground, all your guns blazing at him, all his guns blazing at you? The noise, the speed, the enclosed space, the sense of helplessness, total helplessness. These emotional pressures are so intense you clamp your teeth until they hurt. You're pulled and shoved in so many different directions all at once by an incredible range of extreme, conflicting sensations. The indifferent forces of gravity, the jarring twists and thuds of ballistics, the screaming machinery, and in the cramped cockpit, claustrophobia claws at you. You're trapped. You're powerless. You can't breathe. It's absolutely unbearable. And yet you have to bear it. Pull out too soon and you expose your underside to the enemy guns before you can kill him, and you die instead. Your mind screams to be through the run and out the other side, to do it quickly. But that desire is twisted by the danger that's waiting there for you. And still, you're attracted by the danger, drawn to it, because you know it's the only way out. That's all you want. So you hold the approach, coming closer and closer. You see the enemy guns flashing licks of red-orange flames directly in front of you, red and green tracers arching toward you, hunting for you. You slump in the seat, instinctively pulling in your elbows and knees, hoping it will make you a smaller target. And the screaming increases. You know you're now screaming out loud at the top of your lungs. You don't hear it with your ears. You just feel it. It's the fear inside you screaming to escape, to flee. A fear so deep, so basic, it makes you cold. And you shiver in the 100-degree heat. An absolute terror so overwhelming that your body separates from your mind. It takes over, reacting instinctively. Your stomach tightens. Bile burns your throat. Your mouth is too dry to swallow. Your vision tunnels. You lose control of your bladder. And with it comes an uncontrollable rage deep inside you, a blind fury toward that force which makes you powerless, the enemy. You can see him now. You can see the fear on his face. You recognize the look. It's the same fear. He knows what you know. In a matter of few seconds, one of you will be dead. There's no other choice, no other way. Later, if you live, he'll revisit you, a slow motion movie in your mind. He may have been a good person, maybe someone's father or brother. He may have been a beloved teacher or gentleman farmer. In another place and time, you might even have been friends. But at the moment, you have to take his life, or he will take yours, even if he doesn't want to. And when he visits later, you will feel a heavy sadness, wondering who really is the loser, him or you, when he visits later in the memory. The rage inside builds inside you, becoming a beast on leash, and it focuses on the enemy, on his fear, and it becomes a fierce resolve to fight, to kick, gouge, hit, claw, bite, until the danger is gone. Until you've killed a human you did not hate, a gentleman farmer who could have been your friend. They call that courage and award it with medals, but it can never be separated from the fear that aroused it and from the madness that accompanies it. All of these emotions are so intense, so painful, you can't handle it very long. All you can think about is ending your anguish. You don't care about rights and wrongs. You don't consider life and death. You give no thought to the chances of victory or defeat, or the battle's purpose or lack of purpose. All that matters is the final critical instant when you release yourself into that violent catharsis you both seek and dread, and fly out the other side. Now jam all of this into 12 seconds, the average time of a typical helicopter gun run. He says, I saw my first dead person, my first dead human being. I watched him die, saw the life go out of his eyes. He was running past my hole. A mortar round went off, and he dropped right there, right in front of me, no more than 2 feet away. He looked at me, asked if I would help him. It was all very calm, no sense of urgency. I said, sure, I'd help him. He'd be fine. And then he just died, very calmly, very quietly. And I guess I felt something inside me die with him. His name was Billy Boy. He was 19 years old. From the waist down, he had no body left. Barely enough for his family to bury. When I'm doing nothing like sitting or trying to sleep but can't, it all comes back over and over. I could always picture myself as a casualty. I'd think, will I get it tomorrow? Will a piece of metal tear me apart too? I remember I had ringworm and sores all over my legs. There was no food, no tents or cots, no clean clothes. Leeches were all over me. I gave up trying to burn them off. They just get fat and swollen. And when they were full, they drop off. I rolled around in my own filth, forgot how bad I smelled. It got so it was natural. And drugs were everywhere in Vietnam, everywhere. And just about anything you wanted. At the bigger base camps, they would just suddenly pop up whenever anyone went looking. At the small camps, distant outposts, they were brought in by Air America. And that was a small civilian flight service which turned out to be a CIA company operation. At Chow Dock, I went into an opium den. The real thing. It was off limits to everyone except officers. I see politicians preaching and campaigning about the evils of drugs, pointing fingers, claiming the other guy is soft on drug crimes, saying they will change the laws and send all the drug dealers to prison. Well, who do the politicians think they were when they funded CIA air operations, issued congressional warrants for officers to visit opium dens? Isn't that being a drug dealer? Of course, what should we expect? They're the same politicians who sent 19-year-old kids to die in a war no one wanted, no one except the big corporations who were raking in enormous profits on the war. The same corporations who funded the politicians' political careers. Good night.